good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. The weather is finally starting to feel like it did back in February, which means we're inching closer and closer to patio pints, backyard barbecues with friends and family, the soothing voice of Buck Martinez and Dan Schulman calling Jays games that echo from speakers in neighborhoods, and beer festivals are fast approaching, including the annual Toronto Festival of Beer. Better known in the industry as TFOB, this huge beer festival takes place every July at Toronto's Bandshell Park and features tons of beer made by some of the very best craft breweries here in the province. There's live music, experiential activations, exciting food vendors, and much, much more. It dates back to 1996. It's been a summer tradition for thousands of beer drinkers during that time, getting together with friends and making those hideous custom t-shirts or dressing up in costumes. We saw a bunch of hot dog costumes over the years, and there's this one guy that we'll talk about on the show today who wears this goddamn zebra hat every festival. But they come out to sample from over 400 beers, not at the same time and not all on the same day. That would be crazy. It's a big celebration of the world's best beverage and a great way to experience some exciting one-off creations. But TFOB has also had its share of struggles over the past 28 years. Ownership changes, flack on social media, which may or may not have been fueled by misconceptions and misunderstandings, some communication with beer writers, we know the one, switching of locations, ticket pricing, and other items. And we're going to discuss all that today with and the history of TFOB with Les Murray, owner of Beerlicious, the event company that runs the festival. But as you can tell by my voice, I need a beer, and I'm going to crack open my Great Lakes Lager, the official beer, or what I'm calling the official beer of summer. So let me get at it. Hang tight. We'll come back right after this ad.
Toronto's Festival of Beer returns to Bandshell Park at Exhibition Place between July 26th and 28th. Come to TFOB and enjoy the best of beer and beverage, showcasing over 400 varieties of products, the best of bites, eats, treats, and more. And the best beats on the Bandshell stage, including headliners Cypress Hill, Josh Ross, Taking Back Sunday, all rocking the Bandshell stage. Don't judge, just enjoy. TFOB, July 26th to 28th. Tickets available at beerfestival.ca.
Well, isn't this ironic? We come back from an ad for TFOB, and we're here with Les Murray, the guy who runs the whole show. And Les is here drinking a Great Lakes light lager. Welcome to the show, Les.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. And this is delish, by the way.
It's a nice, easy drinking.
Yeah.
Crisp, clean,
especially
4%.
On a nice sunny day.
It's a beautiful day while we're recording this, and we have a lot of chat about today, so why don't we get right into it? First and foremost, tell us about yourself, who you are outside of the TFOB. Again, that's Toronto Festival of Beer, outside of the TFOB world.
Well, it's funny, just coming here to Mike's place is actually...
Yes, we are recording this in Mike Boone's basement, Toronto Mike.
Exactly, and he's south of Etobicoke. I grew up in the Etobicoke region, right back in the day, a little north of here, though. When I was a young age, right, there were brewers all around me, right? Labatt's was up the street, right off the 401, and Molson was actually Carling O'Keefe. At the time, was out there too. So I always kind of thought, hey, one of these days, I'm going to go work for one of these guys, right? So I ended up working for both of them, including Molson during summer jobs. So that's kind of where I got my start in beer.
And I wanted to ask you about that because I know you were formerly in beer, and so walk us through the two jobs, or the jobs you had with those two.
Yeah, a lot
massive breweries.
Yeah, well, as I started out, it was really just a gig for the summer. Right, so worked in production, worked in merchandising, didn't do any sales at all. I mean, I spent most of the time on the operational side, the logistics side, and that was both at Carling O'Keefe and at Labatt, and I left there, and when I finished university, they asked me to come in, and so took a gig at Labatt. It was in logistics, moving beer back and forth from all the plants, things like that. And the promotions guy kind of took a shiny to me. He said, hey, give that. He was a pal with my boss at the time. He said, hey, give this guy, something else around marketing. He should be doing something in the promotion side. So I got involved in the promotional side, and that's kind of early 90s, if you will. And I, got a gig in brand and was doing a little bit of work in brand. Then I went on the road and sold beer.
So not to make this about Labatt, but it shaped a big part of your beer career. What kind of events did you do back in the day? Because I can remember back in college, early 2000s, in university, there was some big Labatt festivals around the province that we don't see anymore. But were you part of some of those?
I was, yeah. We, we would do things called the Blue Zone, and we'd go around and doing a lot of things. We did some work with Indian Motorcycle and had a whole series of music events tied to the brand, which was LGD at the time, and going into bars and doing events and things like that. And then another one where we got involved in a tour right across Canada called the Another Roadside Attraction. The feature headliner of that, Tragically Hip.
Nice.
This died in 1994, 95. Right. So, had a lot of experience with that, and then went on the road in sales and spent a number of years there. And then, came to a point where I was like, hey, I kind of like the entrepreneurial thing and I would like to do something else. And that's when I started having discussions with the owners of TFOB.
So when you were with Labatt, I was with Labatt for a period there in the mid 2000s, and our paths never crossed. But were you ever with the Olin Specialty Company at the time?
No, but I certainly knew a lot about it. I didn't go to that side of it, and that was kind of a unique enterprise that they put together, right? Building some of the smaller brands and brands that they were bringing in from across the other provinces too, right?
And a lot of those Olin Specialty folks that started with Labatt and moved into that kind of section or programming, a lot of them have gone on when they shut down the program and moved into craft.
Yeah.
And I really think that, and I talk a lot about it with people in the beer industry of my generation, that I really think Olin and Labatt did way more for craft than anyone gives them credit for, because they opened the doors to Belgian beers in Ontario. They in Canada, Belgian beers with Leff and Hugarden, and then Bass came in and Stella came in, and they started really telling bars how to respect beer, everything that the Belgians were doing, and it allowed craft brewers to walk in and then say, well, we've been trying to do this, but now that respect our brands.
Yeah, you're banging on about that, right? Because prior to that, it was really more tied to sports properties, right? The Blue Jays, it was, the Leafs, it was, but basketball wasn't there actually at the time. But, and then the group that did that decided they were bringing in some imports and stuff. And it was an interesting thing from my perspective. So I came into the sales role after, is watching kind of the progression of how well guys got trained, and they got trained on kind of proper pouring, clean glassware, how to actually, manage a draft tap and making sure it was clean. All that messaging versus just hey,
here's some tickets.
Here's some tickets. Yeah. Exactly. So
a little fun fact. When I was out in Nova Scotia working for Labatt, I was just an inside guy way back to like a junior. And we did the Stella Draft Master Pour Championship, like internally as staff. And here I am, this guy from Ontario goes in and beats them all.
Right.
And they're like, "Who is this guy?" I'm like, I just work in like the retail store and tap room and just have some fun with it. But it's a Bill White, Roger Mateg, Kevin Healy. There was a lot of them from back in the day at Labatt that have gone on to do some great things in craft. So, so those are your Labatt days. Now let's get to TFOB. So we know Les Murray now. He worked at Labatt. He worked at Carling, and he was in sales and promotion. So that leads into TFOB. Your beer's been in your blood for a long time. So let's. It was created in 1996 by two dudes, Greg Causeway and Scott Rondo.
Correct.
And when did you come onto the scene?
10 years after, 2006, 2007, yeah. Yeah, funny. I mean, it when I was deciding to leave Labatt's and go out and do something entrepreneurial, I love the idea of sticking around beer, and it wasn't necessarily going to the sales side or a craft piece, but I really enjoyed the event production piece, right? So I knew about the beer festival, Did not actually, had never attended.
I was just going to ask, did you, in your role, you never had any involvement in it?
No, not at all, right? I was doing, by that time, I was doing a lot more working in developing merchandise and promotional tools for the West, which was privatized. Yeah, no, but they were privatized, right? So in Calgary, that there was a lot more kind of activity going on at retail, in store, and developing kind of programs around that. So that's what I was doing. So I wanted to kind of continue on the beer front, and knew about the beer festival. I had never been to the beer festival, but I did, hook up with one of the owners and said, "Hey, let's have a conversation." So we had a conversation and ended up doing a deal and buying in. And went to my first beer festival. Owning
now, I like to consider myself a little bit of like an amateur beer historian, and I gotta say, there's nothing out there about the history of TFOB. I can't find anything. I don't really know the history of it. So, pre your time, what can you tell us about what TFOB was back in the day? Because I know it's changed dramatically. From what I know, obviously it was started as a very small production, right? There was no other than about 10 to 12 craft brewers, and a few food guys. That was kind of it. It started at Fort York, and then they continued to grow it a bit, and every year just kind of got a little better, and but it was also challenging, right? Because it was a different kind of concept. It was like, let's have a beer in the park. Let's have a few beers in the park. Yeah. Oh, let's have way too many beers in the park, right? And when I got involved in 2007, going and seeing it for the first time with different eyes, obviously, because I'm now involved, right? It was kind of a little bit disconcerting, because it was, like I said, I didn't feel like it was something that would last. Right. 28 years now.
Yeah, 28 years for sure.
So our paths again didn't cross at Labatt, and they didn't cross in 2007. But in 2007, that was my first year ever attending TFOB, and I moved back from the East. And I said to Labatt, "Hey, I started this blog, and I'm writing about beer." And they said, "Well, you can't work for us if you're writing about all these different beers, right? So, but you can work some events for us." So I went to TFOB that year, and I was in the Keith's booth.
Yeah.
And I show up, and
such a small world.
I show up and get into the Keith's booth, and Keith's Red, Keith's just regular lager or IPA, sorry. And I got that little dig in there.
Yeah.
And I said to someone, so what division are you from in Labatt? And I go, no, we're just paid actors for this. And I said, oh, really? What can you tell me about the beer? And they're like, well, that's what you're here for, aren't you? And I'm like, no, I'm just here to pour beer. So that then really showed me the impact that having a brewer there, having someone that really worked for the brewery knows, because there was tons of communication about, oh, what's this new Keith's Red? And so my whole weekend was just, okay, this is regurgitate, but also what do you like about it? And so that's my long way of saying our paths somehow crossed paths in 2007. So you took complete ownership when? So you own TFOB now? 2016. So so Scott was out at that point?
Yeah, Scott was out at that point, and Greg and I were kind of working it together, and he wanted to move on and do some other things. He was living south.
Yep.
So we did a deal and took it from there. Yeah.
And again, being someone who's been very immersed in the beer industry for a long, long time, you've made some pretty dramatic changes to the festival. Can you walk us through some of those from when you first took over and then when you took over yourself?
Sure. I guess it was the second year in the last year in Fort York when it was crazy, and I think I got the initial kind of information from Fort York that were saying, you guys are getting too big. You need to move on, right?
You were like the number one purchaser of sawdust in Toronto, I think, right?
Speaking of, you want to talk about that story?
I can remember that in 2007 and 2008, that mud pit.
The mud pit of 2008.
And the Great Lakes booth was right out front of that booth. Yeah. And again, I wasn't working for them at the time, but I was right there. And people were having contests, drinking a Devil's Pale Ale, and then they'd run and slide through this.
Exactly. We have video too. Yeah, that was a crazy time. And that was that summer. It rained every single weekend. The place was just soaking wet. And I remember Roger's Picnic. It was a music event that was a week before ours, and it was there. And they didn't really take, and it rained. And, but, so all of a sudden you think of all these people that are stomping it down, and then there's rain, and stomping it down, and then there's rain. The grass never has a chance to kind of recover. So we went in the following week already seeing like, oh my God, look at that over there. There's a little bit muddy there. What are we going to do? You know what I mean? So we kind of did what we needed to do. Well, didn't it rain all weekend? Right?
It poured. It didn't rain. It poured.
And by Saturday night, it was literally, anywhere you walked, you were basically ankle deep in mud. And I wasn't sure whether they were going to open Sunday, right? And I remember, Gabe at the time. And I said to Gabe, he called me up, and I said, well, okay, just let me know, what are we going to do here? So he started going to, no, I just need to know, can we do it and how much? That's all I need to know, right? And he went back, and we the amazing production crew, right? And I think that, that's part of building like a really strong exhibition and festival, is actually having that crew that can kind of go on the fly. Anyways, they went to Woodbine Racetrack, and they went across the street to the old horse barn right at the C&E and got sawdust and got hay and laid that all out Saturday night until Sunday morning. So we'd be open at noon.
Vividly recall that like it's so funny that the 1 year, like, and what would that have been, like
the year
almost 20 years ago or something now, right?
Yes.
That it still rings like that experience, and that how just crazy it was. And I think that, I'm not going to name the brewery, but there was a brewery that were body painting people, and so there was so I can say, and this is kind of getting back to the question, the changes you've made. So even without the rain, there was body slides, and like people are just getting crazy. There was a lot of fights, and there was a lot of TFOB went big, and it went crazy in the aspect of it. Let's go and just get shit-faced.
I can tell you stories around, and for a number of factors. Number one, when I came in there that first time and I experienced that, one of the things, obviously you recognize right away is, okay, how are you managing this security? What are you doing? How are you speaking to your exhibitors and talking to them about, hey, what they have to watch for, right? What are we telling our audience and telling them, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, this is, a festival that, yes, it's a sampling festival, but you have to do this responsibly. Yep. And if you're falling down, your day is done. Yeah. Goodbye. Well, right? But we didn't have the staff and the security to be able to manage that. Yeah. That and the fact that the fort was meant to keep people out. And we had 8,000 people jammed in there. Yep. You could hardly even notice. I'm assuming some people who were so far gone and they were still standing because it was so tight around them. You know what I mean?
Or they're hiding in one of the forts. Or they're hiding,
yeah, exactly. So anyways, at the end of that festival, it was clearly a sign that, hey, we need to do a lot more things right. And it included, everything from the responsibilities of the exhibitor, right, and what they should be doing. I remember that period of time. I saw two guys that were taking their shirts off, and they're like, kind of hitting each other in the arm. I was like, what are these guys doing, right? And sure enough, I found out because they were pretty cool like 2 minutes ago. What was going on? And there was a exhibitor that was doing a high octane product that he was selling it and selling it as and promoting it as the highest octane you're going to get at the festival. It's like, what the hell? I just happened to walk into it. Yeah. Right. So obviously then there were rules coming in around, okay, how much, what is the alcohol content of your beers, what we can do, what we want to make sure, and how we manage that,
So you're managing that and you wanted to change that, but you're also, I'm putting this in my words and in your thoughts. I think you want to change the customer experience, but you also wanted to change the whole culture of what the festival had been. Yeah. And so if there's one big change that you could identify that you've made, like other than the responsibility on the vendor, what would that have been?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I think the security for sure,
Yeah.
right? In trying to really kind of clean that up, we brought in kind of a, paid duty, and we actually brought them under the tent.
Yeah.
To say, hey, how do we do this? Like, do this with us, right? We know that this is an opportunity here to actually bring, some people together and enjoy and discover beer, all those beautiful things, right? But hey, it has to be managed properly, and it doesn't particularly fall solely on the producer.
Yeah.
Right? It's because it's all you're dealing with exhibitors, you're
Yeah.
dealing with consumers, you're dealing with security. So that probably was the biggest thing that we did to help. That the other thing, and then we just started to kind of hone in on, okay, what are other elements that give people, like, I'd rather have you out there dancing after you're feeling good versus just continuing to.
Yeah.
So give them some other experiences they can enjoy. That's when we always had a grilling tent, but how do you make that better?
Yep.
Then we had a stage. We put a stage in. Okay, well, what kind of artists can you bring now? What can we afford to do, right? And then the other opportunity was really moving, right? At the end of that year of the mudslide.
Yeah.
We started looking at
I was
Bancho
seeing
Park.
if you were actually going to get to that.
Yeah,
to be
sorry.
that was the biggest change.
But that was a huge change.
I thought that's what you were going to say. Again,
Yeah.
here I am putting
my
thoughts into your.
Well, I was thinking, basically timelines
Yeah.
more than anything
Yeah.
else, right? But that was a big change
Yeah.
because it allowed us not only to go into the band shell, put less people on the site because we didn't know how much, because you can't really tell really. You can have an idea, you think this much. When you put a bunch of tents in, you put some washrooms in there, you put some other activations in there, what is it going to look like? So we actually put less people on that site in the first year. It was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah.
We can absolutely put.
There was a
more
lot
people.
more, 100% more walking room and
Yeah.
more freedom, and you felt, I don't know, an air of sophistication almost. And and that's in quotations, but like you could go from booth to booth, and like you're outside, beautiful weather. And I've always said you have a horseshoe up your ass because every weekend this festival happens. It looks like it's going to pour, and it might at night, but you always get lucky. I don't know how you do it.
I think it's some sort of weird thing about the location of Banjo Park, right? Storms.
Seriously, listeners, Les Murray, if you want a weather prediction, ask him because he's gonna tell you. There's a lot more to cover here, but I'm gonna take a sip of my beer while I look at my next question. You used to do Spring Beer Festival,
Yeah.
and you used to do Brewers Plate, and you used to do. I know I'm missing one. Fizz Fest. So where did those all go? And so maybe just Beerlicious, Umbrella. What else do you guys do?
Yeah, we did that. We used to have Gentlemen's Expo for a couple of years too, right? And we got involved in that and got involved in.
I saw City actually, a guy. Listeners, you might not know, but I saw him at an event or at a restaurant one day, just out of the blue, and he's like, "Holy shit, it's the Gentleman's Expo guy." Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So we had a number of things over in our history, and obviously the TFOB is kind of the longest running thing, and really put that in kind of good shape to kind of continue to grow. We've done what we've done on the entertainment side, and add some elements of that. And obviously, why wouldn't we? We're in a band shell, an old historic band shell right on that side, and I love that park. It's unbelievable, right? Lots of challenges, right?
I wouldn't say it's a hidden gem, but it's a gem of Toronto.
It is a gem, yeah, for sure. In any case, we were doing these other events. We wanted to keep kind of our production crew busy, right? So we did Spring Festival. We did that down at Sherburne Common at first, and then we ended up back at Fort York for a few when they removed the outdoor nursery part. That's kind of where they have it now, outside of the gates of the fort. So worked very, very well. You're really, really subject to weather in outdoor events,
spring,
and especially spring, right? And you could have you could have snow. Right. Remember, we had a freeze. I mean, hell, we did the
Steam Whistle Roundhouse.
We did the first one at not Steam Whistle. What's the place down in the valley?
Brickworks.
The Brickworks.
Brickworks, right? Freezing beer, beer lines.
And it was like a polar vortex. We didn't even have to bring in ice because the ice was up. down under these old stoves, right? That was where all
This is
the
what makes
ash
beer
would go.
so fun. Like people are like, let's do a beer fest in the winter. Let's do one in the spring. And then brewers are all there and they're trying to pour beer, but the lines are frozen. And they're like, does anyone have a kettle that we can pour hot water on? And they're like, what are you doing? We have to unfreeze the lines.
We spent $0 on ice.
Yeah.
That particular one, right? It was nuts. But so we did a few, and like I said, you're subject to that. So, if it takes a while to kind of get a festival kind of ingrained, I think, right? And like I said, and then you're competing with, other entities that are out there doing the same thing.
Yeah, so you guys are one of the oldest beer festivals in Canada. I would almost reckon North America, without going too much into the US, but there's Mondial.
Yep.
In Montreal. There is the Great Canadian Beer Festival in Victoria. There is another one in Chambly, Quebec. It's off the top of my head. I can't think of the name. And I can't think of another one that's as long as maybe in Nova Scotia. The NSLC runs one. But so I was going to ask about the competition, because is that a reason why some of these other ones have gone away? Because the Brewers Plate was amazing, and it allowed you guys and the previous owners put craft brewers in touch with some of the more finer dining restaurants, or the named like the hottest restaurants of the day, who would most likely work with wineries instead of breweries. And it allowed us to show the flavors and everything that we could do with the beers, and it was a great festival, or a great event. But with all these other people trying to open festivals, is it just like craft brewing? Like, there's so many breweries out there right now, and you're scaling back a bit, or I want to put my attention to the big fest.
Yeah, and I think with more, all of that, all in the above. I mean, I think with over the years, as I have, right, seeing such the growth in craft and the growth in the number of brewers just in the province of Ontario alone, not mine across the country.
Well, when we got in, when you took 2007, for both of us, 2007, there was like 35 breweries, 40 breweries.
What's the number
now? It's like 340 now of
340.
brick and mortar breweries. 340. We're having a very bad year and a bad 2 years, actually. But still, the numbers. I was talking to someone out in Nova Scotia, and they're like, per population, they have 16 breweries per 100,000. 16. Like, that's a lot of breweries for a small population, but they're still growing, which is good. So sorry, go to.
Well, so my point being, so many more brewers that they're all doing their own individually and events too. So you have so many things going on out there. So then you just kind of make the decisions at some point. Is it worth your while to kind of keep it going? It's not that you don't want to. It's not that you don't love the production, and that if it's not financially viable, well, then you gotta
Well,
move
a great example, and we love them, but Steam Whistle runs two really very well done festivals, and so it's like, okay, they do one in the winter and one in the end of summer, I believe it's
they didn't do it last year.
No, they just did the one. But Brewers Plate, I recommend that one to come back. Yeah. I just want to work with.
Well, that's what I love about you though, Troy, because you think about it a little differently, because really that was the intent, but I don't think a lot of people kind of realize that, right? The opportunity there was to compare food and beer, and obviously show the culinary side of it, right? Like how this thing pairs well. But because we were doing that at Beer Festival ourselves, just with Ted Reeder, and we were pairing beer with, he was infusing the food that he was creating with that. Then we got into multiple chefs doing that and coming out and doing that thing. We worked with a guy down the street, Cheese Boutique, Afram, right? Who kind of, helped us bring that to life even more and more and more.
You've worked with people like Marella in the past, Marella Amato, who's her credentials, I can't even, they're high, but she does a lot of beer and food stuff, and Roger Mateg, and but the Brewers Plate, it's one of those events I think are missing. And in the U.S., the Brewers Association, they run one called Savor. And it's in Washington, and they invite politicians. Everyone comes out. But it's the best restaurants in the nation and the best breweries in the nation, or that's what they sell it as. And I really think that that's something that's missing here, and we'd love to we have no journalists doing beer anymore. and this is one thing that would be, try to put us back on the map. But we could talk about that for a long time. But we have chatted at length, you and I. We've gone to a lot of craft brewers conferences together about some of the misconceptions of TFOB and the sometimes, and I say the sometimes perceived perception of the event. So we talked about pre-2008, and what it is now. So I still think there's a lot of people out there, and we hear about it all the time, of people saying, well, Beer Fest is just a piss up. It's just it's a booze fest. You've talked about the changes you made, security, live music, food, but what's one thing you'd say to clear some of that up? Like, just say, it's not that, it's an experience.
Well, that's the whole idea, right? I mean, and it's, the Beer Fest is it's unique now because at the end of the day, it has been there for such a long time. And you have a lot of people that are loyal to the festival that do come out every year.
The hot dog suit guys, yeah.
Well, you have a little bit of that, but you also, we also had 50 guys from Germany show up in their Lederhosen, right? And showed up for the beer festival and contacted me. I walked those guys in.
Yeah.
It was like, are you kidding me? Come and experience. You're coming all the way from Germany, and I know how much fan you are of Germany, right? They're coming all in, and it was like, we're going to make sure that when they are here, and they were the life.
Show them a good time.
And they were the life of the party. They were the life of the, the event, to people who recognize and remember them. But yeah, I think that's changed. Like, those were Fort York days in my mind, right? I mean, I think we've done, like I said, this park fits it really well. It's laid out really well. We bring lots of food guys in that are great. We do little exhibits. This year we're doing like a Mexican pavilion, so we'll kind of create this area on site that you can go if you like kind of, that style of music. And we got a Libra wrestling match happening down there. And, so cool things like that. And, obviously continue to try and put some pretty good talent on the stage there.
So I'm gonna get to that. That's gonna be the very last question before we get to rapid fire, and that'll be about, tell us all about this year. But it started as a beer fest. It started as, let's go have a couple beers, let's go have a lot of beers, let's go drink a plethora of beers. And is beer still the main focus for you?
Well,
or is it
beer is its heritage.
Complementary.
To me, beer is its heritage, right? It's always been founded in that, right? So that's our roots, right? But it's gone beyond that now, and no different than, on the alcohol category, it's gone beyond beer, right? Where ready to drink, you guys are, doing ready to many of them out there, right? Now you're getting, non-alcs, right? So, yeah, I think it's kind of gone beyond the beer, but at its, it will always be the heart of the festival. And I think that in some respects, we even on our branding went from, Toronto Festival of Beer, which was really known as Beer Fest, right, to TFOB, right? And really kind of recognizing that, yes, I mean, there's an assumption automatically if someone say, hey, you're going to Beer Fest, or you're going to, Toronto. People are, no, not really that is. I don't drink beer much these days. You know what I mean? So there's that versus like, you know that it's also, there's bites there, there's great eats there, right? There's some of the best, restaurants / quick service / guys that are doing kind of creative stuff and food there, right? And they've all participated in it, right? And then you have a great entertainment. You have these areas that get, hell, we've done the Irish Pavilion and the Swedish Pavilion, right? We had Michigan beers one year, right? Great, that's right. So there are all these really cool things, and you know what? Speaking of the Great Lakes and the steam whistles of the world and flying monkeys of the world, they'll come to play too, right? And they actually build kind of cool little booths, and they're bringing products that maybe are unique or you haven't seen.
We have a lumberjack coming this year that's going to juggle chainsaws and fire. So we made sure we cleared it with you and the insurance. And
get the fencing out for sure.
But he's a pro, and it's great. Toronto Festival of Booze. Toronto Festival of Beer will stay Toronto Festival of Beer?
Yeah.
Okay. And so
beer, bites, bands, beats.
That was Greg Clow's name, so he's gonna call you up. The Beats Beer, or he had one. I can't recall, but you just said it very closely. You have non-alcs, you have RTDs, ready to drink cocktails. And you have beer. Anything else on the alcoholic side there?
Well, there may be. Yeah, we may have somebody do some wine, right?
Yeah,
we'll see if that happens. Right?
So you're evolving with
Yeah.
the change in landscape of the alcohol industry.
Yeah.
And so what can people expect this year? Let's get right into 2024. It's what date?
It's July the 26th to the 28th at Banshell Park.
Okay.
Exhibition Place, right on the water.
Easy by transit, easy to get an Uber, drop
great
you
access,
off.
yeah.
If you're going over the Gardner, you can see it because you'll be stopped in traffic. You can look over and see some of the GLB flag waving high.
Exactly.
So what can we expect? What can everyone expect this year?
Well, I think this year, like I said, we've got an area on site we've carved out. We're going to do a bit of a Mexican pavilion, right? Some Mexican beer, little margarita, right? Luce wrestling, program. So, have some fun with it, right? Obviously, we've got 3 great nights of entertainment, right, with Cypress Hill on the Friday. Going a little country on Saturday with Josh Ross, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. It's going to be awesome.
I'm a country boy. Yeah.
And Taking Back Sunday is going to take back Sunday.
Okay, there you go.
So
you're going to get all 3 different demos coming out for.
I guess it was a little bit of that in the thinking, right? It's like you can, and to be honest with you, I mean that's just happened over the course of since we've been there, 2010. So and we're going to have 100 plus booths there, right? Both food, beer, non-beer products, non-alcohol products, right? Ready to drink. And
So now's the time of the podcast to talk about Peter Bullitt and the Great Lakes booth.
Yeah.
So you have a great relationship with Peter, and it's something you guys, I think, bonded over TFOB, right?
Yeah.
He's the guy that in the intro I was talking about the zebra hat. The Toronto Star uses that damn picture every time they put him. It doesn't matter if it's a tax issue or whatever. Peter Bullitt, the owner of Great Lakes, in that damn zebra hat. Yeah. But Peter, this is his event. Like he gets it. He stops.
He gets it. And he took it,
and he stops everything to make sure that TFOB is the best experience for customers, the best experience for our staff that work it. He stands by the brew kettle and he stands by the production area to make sure we come up with some crazy beers, but that are tasty. Yeah. We started Caskapalooza, which kicked off the whole the whole cask craze in Ontario years ago, where you could go to TFOB and taste up to, I think it was 21 different casks on tap at all times, and they were all one-off releases. So maybe because this is a Great Lakes podcast, just to shout out the other guy in London, Ontario. What would you say about the relationship with Great Lakes and TFOB?
Oh, listen, and Peter's a gem. Yep. We both know that, right? And I just got to know Peter through obviously the beer festival, right? And Caskapalooza was really when it kind of all started to tune in, because it was like, you want to do what? You want to. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's find the space. That's why I really kind of liked his passion for it, right? And what he can bring to the table, what his brewery can bring to the table. It's like, you're creating the event and the hype around it. I'm going to do my job and really hone in on it. And that's all of a sudden, would you have 20, 30 casks or something you were going? That was like crazy.
There was one year, again, I wasn't working there, but there was one year they made a gummy bear something, and all the gummy bears, because it was so hot, they all gelled together and they couldn't get, anyway. But that was a good time. And so the relationship has been a good one. We've always been there. We've always supported the TFOB. The after parties. Can you talk about that?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. Well, we all get together and have tea. It's cold by the time we get together, but
all the exhibitors, I mean, I can tell you how that started. So for many years, right at the end of the festival, like when the night's out and you've cleaned up, everybody's cleaned up, and so you're having a beer after a long day, right? Which is exactly what we wanted to do versus having it during the festival, right? Yep. So fantastic. So do your thing, but what happened is you would have all these little pocket parties everywhere. And it's really hard for security to kind of manage, when you still had quite a few exhibitors doing their thing. So what we did is we kind of cleaned it up because it was getting a little bit, like I said, too much, and the security were like too concerned. There were, some challenges or whatever, people fooling around with these other tap paddles, whatever, So we kind of kiboshed that and said, look, you know what, on this, we're not going to do any of that. On this Saturday night after the event and we get some things cleaned up, we'll host the party and we'll bring it. So we contain it all in one spot, right? We'll bring in some food. We'll have, there was some donations and we're ready to go. Right. And we had a little event, right? So it was kind of for staff and friends of, right. And, whoever wanted to, from an exhibitor side, show up,
Well, I remember those before Great Lakes and during Great Lakes. Some of those were, you'd have back then when we had beer writers and beer media people, and the owners of companies would actually be at the festival, and they'd all come together, and it was always the memories will go on. The beer will taste good. So what does the future hold for TFOB?
Well, hopefully more of the same, right? Hopefully we're able to kind of, get back to your point, on the beer side of things. It's a little soft, right, in the marketplace, and guys are kind of worried about and about this summer and making sure that, they can kind of get through. So, and everybody's challenged with that, and I think obviously the consumer too, right? It's having a hard time. It's not like for a lack of stuff going on out there. It's not for a lack of, things to buy and shows on and stuff like that. But it's just whether or not they can afford to kind of be doing that, right? Yeah. So, anyways, we for ourselves will just continue to keep doing what we're doing. We keep the price very, very reasonable, right, for what you can.
Tickets are available now,
Tickets are available now at beerfestival.ca, right, for all 3 days. And like I said, we got a great lineup on stage to accompany, the great food that there, and as most important, some of the great brewers that are coming out to showcase themselves.
And I'm putting you on the spot here, but how many tickets are we going to give away to customers?
Good question.
I think if you're listening to this podcast right now, if you can tell us right now when Les joined TFOB, when he joined TFOB, you'll get 2 tickets. You'll get 4 tickets. 4 tickets to Friday night.
Want to go to Cypress Hill?
Cypress Hill?
We can make it either, whatever they want.
Shoot us a message at podcasts@greatlakesbeer.com and we'll hook you up. Again, that's when Les joined a TFOB, and you'll get 4 tickets to see Cypress Hill and drink Great Lakes.
Yeah, and if you're the second caller,
second emailer,
second emailer, right? If you know the year that we moved to Banshell Park,
good one,
we'll give another 4 tickets.
Okay, let's do it. And we have to make sure Mike Boone, the gentleman recording this from Toronto Mike Podcast, just a shout out to Toronto Mike Podcast. Yeah, he'll be there.
And we're going to give Mike 4 tickets.
All right. Les, this has been awesome. I'm going to crack one more beer. This is going to be my 3rd beer because I just need to keep just as that throat.
Keep it lubricated.
As soon as we come back from an ad, are you cool to stick around for rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Let's do it. Hang tight and hear from Joe Bowen.
Holy Mackinac! What a beer from Great Lakes Brewery. Grab this super crushable, ultra refreshing, clean and crisp lager on April the 18th and help support the amazing Sick Kids Foundation in the process. Supporting local. Never tasted so good.
All right, I got a new, fresh Great Lakes lager in me, and we're ready to do rapid fire. You ready for this, Les?
Go.
Other than Great Lakes, what beer have you been enjoying recently?
Parsons. I spent a little bit of time out in the county.
Yeah.
So with Parsons has a crushable, which I enjoy.
Okay. Give a plug to an Ontario brewery that you find are doing some pretty cool things right now.
There are actually quite a few that are doing some interesting things.
Including, I think the whole industry is trying to evolve right now or innovate and like stand out in some way because of what's going on. So
we talked about a little bit about this. You're going. This is not rapid.
This is rapid fire.
Eastbound.
Eastbound. Okay. Yeah, did you see their social media the other day?
Yeah.
Pretty good. They had the mayor coming out, talking about Curb or Cafe TO.
Cafe TO,
and then they used her for all the memes.
Strong food element.
Yeah, very good. Pickle Girl, very good. Favorite beer and food pairing, speaking of food elements?
My standard would be pizza and beer, as you can tell.
So that's Great Lakes Lager and a nice pepperoni pizza from the Brew Pub. All right. Okay. So great stuff, Les. I love talking to you. I love talking about the history of the beer in this province. I learned a little bit. I'm honest. I learned a lot about TFOB today, to be honest. And I think we cleared the air a bit, dispelling some of those misguided thoughts. And we've talked about blowing smoke up asses every single episode of Beyond Two Fermenters. And I got to tell you, you've done some pretty amazing things with the festival that put it, the reputational side of things have gone way up. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for that. And maybe you don't hear it that much, but we have a great relationship with you and at Great Lakes and TFOB and the staff there. So I just, to end this, you've done great things, and we're looking forward to an amazing July 26th.
July 26th to 28th.
28th, and we'll be there
always
for some
the
Cypress
weekend
Hill and
before the August long weekend.
Yeah. And hopefully no sawdust this year. And Les has that horseshoe up his ass. So thanks, Les, for joining us today.
Thank you,
thanks for enjoying that Great Lakes Light Lager.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cole's notes. It's even sexier when I have this voice. It's time to hear from our man in the lab, Cole Raiskums, in another edition of Cole's Notes. He's going to be discussing how we use the power of nature to make our beer, which is very intriguing. Cole, take it away.
Thanks, Troy. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Cole's Notes segment. Today I'm going to talk about how we harness natural processes to make our beer. Making beer involves a lot of manual labor, time, and expertise. But it would be much harder if we didn't have the help of naturally occurring biological and chemical processes to hold our hands along the way. Things like malt modification, fermentation, and carbonation are just a few instances that Mother Nature helps us put tasty beer in your glass. Allow me to explain. Malt modification refers to how well the endosperm of kernels of malt break down. The endosperm is where the barley stores many of its nutrients, enzymes, and starch, all of which are vital to a successful brew. Having too little or too much modification can dramatically impact the quality of a brew. Before sending the malt to the brewery, maltsters induce germination naturally by making the barley embryos think that they are growing in the ground. They hydrate them and aerate them, causing the barley to germinate. And then when the right level of modification is achieved, the maltsters kiln the grains and send them to the brewery. The starches are broken down by the enzymes produced in germination when we brew with the malt, releasing sugars and nutrients for our yeast to ferment. Our malt is essentially a ready-made meal delivered to the yeast doorstep, some assembly required. Speaking of yeast, did you know that we have very little control over how a yeast ferments? As brewers, we're basically prepping a meal with all of its favorite ingredients, then letting the yeast do its thing until it's done fermenting. If we give it enough sugar, oxygen, nutrients, and keep it at the preferred temperature, then it will make us a tasty beer. If any of those are not up to snuff, well, then we run into fermentation issues. We're basically just yeast farmers, and the trillions of cells in the tanks are our livestock. Finally, a naturally occurring byproduct of fermentation is carbon dioxide, the same thing we use to carbonate our beer. In certain beers, like our West Etobicoke, we purposely let the yeast continue fermenting in the can for a short time to naturally produce carbon dioxide. Since the gas has nowhere to go in a closed can, it dissolves back into the beer, giving it a finer and naturally occurring spritziness. Who knew nature could taste so good?
2024 marks the 30th anniversary of the Etobicoke Sports Hall of Fame. Founded in 1994, the hall continues to thrive and honor for all time those individuals and organizations who achieve the highest standard of distinction in sport, inspiring and supporting the pursuit of excellence by student and Special Olympics athletes within our community. President and chair of the board, Joanne Noble, is always awe-inspired by how the Etobicoke community continues to produce amazing people through sport. From the beginning, after the great Johnny Bauer was the first to be inducted into the Hall, there are now 176 honored members 30 years later. And just as important, the Hall has provided over $150,000 in scholarships for Humber College and Etobicoke High School student athletes and Etobicoke Special Olympics athletes.
Around the industry.
This segment will be, this episode anyway, pretty focused on GLB as there hasn't been much going on in the last few weeks, much to the chagrin of that other podcast in London, Ontario. But first, we're going to start with a quick update on the Ontario Craft Brewers Conference. This year, it's taking place not in Niagara Falls. For the first time in a long time, we're moving it to Hamilton. It's going to take place on November 6th and 7th, and breweries and non-breweries for that matter, and when I say non-breweries, that could be anyone that's interested in the beer industry, can now scoop up tickets. The early bird rate for the OCB members and non-members, so that's other breweries that aren't part of the OCB, can buy tickets now at a discounted rate. So act fast before that expires. The OCB has 2 great keynote speakers lined up, which they'll be announcing later this week. I have some inside knowledge about both of them, and if I may, they're going to be amazing. One is from beer, and he's from the Pacific Northwest of the USA. He's got 5 locations. So he's coming in from the U.S. to do a keynote, and the other one has had a long tenured, great coaching legacy in the NHL. Jeff Talmy from Town Brewery, Brad Clifford from Clifford, and Cam Fryer from Royal City are leading the education track of the conference, and they have some great sessions lined up. And they'll be announced very soon too. So head over to OntarioCraftBrewers.com and get your tickets now. Now, like I said, we're going to move over to the GLB. Jesus, I stumbled over my words there. This must be the 3 premium lagers I've had. But we're over to GLB. The OCTO mix pack is now out. It's available across the province at LCBO locations. $14.95. You get 4 cans, $4.73. Double OCTO at 8%. OCTO Light, if you're looking to reduce calories and drink something with lots of flavor, that's your beer. Octopus Wants to Fight, our regular OCTO, and then New England Octopus Wants to Fight. So all 4 of those beers, 1 each, is in a 4-pack. You can find those all over Ontario for $14.95. And speaking of our favorite, I always get this word wrong, almost like Gloucester. Oh, I got it right there, Mike Boone. Speaking of our favorite cello pad, our favorite octopus. Cans of Octopus Wants to Fight IPA are now 30 cents off at the LCBO. This limited time offer ends on May 25th. $3.35 a can. And as Les was saying, they have a Mexican theme over at TFOB this year. We have 2 beers for Cinco de Mayo coming out, or they've already been released, and hopefully you can still grab some now, but 2 versions released last Thursday. Dos Llevos Mexican Lager and Dos Llevos Mexican Lager with lime. And I got to tell you, the lime one is killer. It is a beautiful beer. So those are over at GreatLakesBeerShop.ca. And cans of Holy Mackinac, our collaboration beer with the voice of the Leafs, Mr. Joe Bowen, continue to fly here at the brewery. So you might want to get another order in before they disappear. And remember, $1 from each can goes to Sick Kids Foundation. That's it. That's all, folks. Episode 8 has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Les and will consider scooping up some tickets this year. Head over to beerfestival.ca. Today's episode is fueled by cans of the crushable Great Lakes Lager, and in Les's case, Great Lakes Light Lager, which you can find all over Ontario at the beer store, LCBO, select grocery stores, and on our online shop. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at the Brew Pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com. And don't forget, name the year that Les joined TFOB and name the year that TFOB moved from Fort York to the Bandshell Park, and you'll get 4 tickets to the Friday session. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good. Cheers, Les.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit greatlakesbeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.